Hi, it's Jeff Chalmers here from discoverdouble-bass.com, which is the home of online learning for double bass players. So if you're looking to improve your playing in some way, please come and join us over at the website and we'll hopefully be able to entertain you and educate you with our courses. We also have lessons and interviews with world-renowned bass players such as the one joining me today, and he's really well known for his work with a band that are making a big impact in the music scene, Go Go Penguin. And the double bass is right in the centre of the band. You know, they're really prominent, they're playing some big gigs, festivals, there's a lot of touring. They have a fantastic Tiny Desk concert that I'm interested in asking him about, and they're also signed to Blue Note Records, and it doesn't get any cooler than that. So let's welcome Nick Blacker. Nick, great to see you today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Well, I'm just really thrilled that you've come across from Manchester. We're in Leeds at Left Bank, and we're just really glad that you're able to join us. And the reason that you're free is, of course, the global pandemic and the lockdown that's been happening, and otherwise you're a very busy man, so we're grateful to take some of your time. So what have you been doing in lockdown? How's it been looking for you guys?
Well, the beginning of lockdown we were just about to release a new album, so obviously the timing wasn't great, but you know, it's a global pandemic, so that kind of pales into insignificance really comparatively. So we managed to get some videos done just before lockdown, like the actual day of lockdown, to support the new album, but then it's just really been a time to maybe work on some stuff that I haven't had time to do because I'm on the road all the time, so a bit of practice and just a bit of time at home for myself.
I can remember, it's just come to my mind when I spoke to you on the phone probably 10 years ago, maybe even longer, 12 years ago, before you were in the band, and I was speaking to you about how many gigs you were doing because you were freelancing, and you were saying that the problem is you don't have any time to practice. And at the time I was studying at the local music college in Manchester, and you were saying, oh, I'm really jealous, Jeff, because you're getting to do some practice and I'm now like just doing all these gigs and things. But have you been able to like get some time, and what have you been working on?
Yeah, so a lot of stuff with the bow really. Just trying to improve that, always working on intonation. That's just, you know, it's not like, right, I've got good intonation, now ticked off. Yeah. It's like a constant battle to work on and fundamentals, but a lot of bowing, trying to get more into that, because it's not my first thing playing with the bow, but you know, getting more proficient and just checking out some of the players and who use the bow, and you know, making myself feel a bit sick at how good some of them are. But yeah.
So who are some of the players that you've been listening to that you've enjoyed?
Edgar Mayer's one that springs to mind.
Comes to mind, doesn't it?
It's just like, I mean, he's unbelievable. It's such a pleasure to listen to, but at the same time, it's like,
he was in London this year, you know. I didn't get to see him, but yeah, I think it was in January. And
yeah, I mean, he played in Manchester with Christian McBride.
Were you at that gig?
No, I was on tour. Yeah,
it was really good.
I saw it coming up and I was like, oh, I'm in France.
I was thinking practically every bass player I knew was there in the UK jazz scene and classical scene as well. It was a lot of bass players in Christian McBride and Edgar Mayer duo gig. I was like, yeah, I'm going to go to that one.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a video on YouTube I've seen a bit, but you know, the things that he does with Chris Thiele, bass and mandolin, which maybe is not like the kind of, maybe it falls into a bluegrass kind of category, but it just sort of transcends any kind of style. The sort of musicianship involved in it is just brilliant.
I really like, there's a guy called Ethan Jodovich. I hope I'm not butchering his surname, but he plays with Serena, I've forgotten her surname now actually, but a wonderful mandolin player, and it's a very similar kind of world, you know, that they're occupying, and I'm really getting into a lot of the bluegrass stuff, and there's some fantastic bass players out there. So do you have, has your routine changed a lot over the years, or is it that you're kind of working through scales and, I don't know, exercises and, you know?
Well, it's quite difficult to have a routine, especially when you're on the road. That's kind of the problem. So it's just kind of taking care of fundamentals a lot of the time. Definitely scales. I think it's just important to always be, I mean, as bass players, that's basically what we're doing most of the time, scales and arpeggios, so you're just knowing everything on this, where it is, you know, maybe it's from the jazz background, but, you know, just doing major scales for a warm-up, so like, you know, 2 octaves around the cycle of fifths, or, you know, so. And different fingerings.
Yeah.
You know, so you can, you know, that kind of thing. So you can just get around, you know, in whatever you want to play with in a scale, that's kind of there. So it's not just like one fingering, right, it just goes up here, but maybe trying to do scales all on just moving up on one string and then moving back down, things like that.
Yeah.
So you've got that facility to get around wherever you want to.
Oh, that's really cool. And is transcription part of your world? Is it something that you've done a lot of in the past? Is it something you do now?
Yeah, it's not something I do now. I was thinking about getting into it again because of lockdown.
Yeah.
But I haven't done it. It's probably getting on for around 10 years ago now. I did quite a lot, really. Got quite obsessed with... I used to play loads of bebop and be obsessed with trying to work out solos. So
what were some of the players that you were listening to that you really... Christian McBride is popping into my mind straight away.
Christian McBride, definitely. Yeah, I mean, he's just incredible. You know, he's kind of continued on from that Ray Brown thing, but the level of facility and virtuosity, it's not just his speed, but his lines are...
The clarity of idea.
Yeah, so spent a lot of time trying to, you know, do a bad impression of Christian McBride. And Oscar Pettiford, like going right back, really, I think he's sort of like real bebop pioneer. I think to me, he's sort of like the Charlie Parker of double bass kind of thing, just his lines and some of the things that he played. And I mean, some of the recordings are not always great because they're pretty old, but, you know, I just love a lot of the Oscar Pettifords.
Just, there's so many classic melodies, aren't there? To say, but okay, just thinking about these legends of the bass world, obviously with Go-Go Penguin, that we will talk about a little bit later. Do you ever get to bump into any of these guys at festivals? Have you ever had a chance to kind of rub shoulders with Christian or, you know, one of these, you know?
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about that.
I have actually, bumped into Christian. You kind of see people. It's one of them. You're all at a festival and you're in the Netherlands or something. You go down to the breakfast room, and this has happened. I've actually walked into the breakfast room and John Patitucci and Christian McBride are having breakfast together. So I thought, I'm not going to go, hey, you know, not do that thing, sort of leave them to it. But yeah, you do get to see him. And with Christian McBride, I actually we were playing after him on a festival. So I had to go up and we were using the same bass.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it was before I started traveling with a double bass. And so it's like, all right, I'll just go and grab it off him then. Yeah. And so we had a bit of a chat about James Brown, because I know he's a big fan. So that was cool.
Yeah, no, I think that's one of the things, meeting your heroes in those kind of contexts, and you know. So what about when you were starting out? Tell us about some of the people that you studied with then. About your background. Is it a classical background? Is it a jazz background? Because where you are with Go-Go Penguin, I think, you know, you could come from a lot of different places to end up in that role. You know, it's so yeah. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I'm kind of like the odd one out because I'm not from a classical background in Go-Go Penguin. So those guys both studied at the Royal Northern College of Music in Manchester, whereas I did my degree at Leeds College of Music.
Who was your bass teacher there?
The bass teacher at the time was a guy called Stuart Riley, and then after that there was I had Robin Malarkey, who's an electric. Well, he plays both actually, but. Yeah, going back, it was really when I was doing my A-levels. So I started playing bass guitar when I was 13, and then I was just playing like indie stuff. But really obsessed with playing the bass guitar, and then kind of got into funk and hip hop and crossover stuff, which I've always been into, you know. And then the double bass interest came when I was about 16, and my teacher for my A-levels was Steve Berry. Oh,
a Manchester-based, well, a UK bass player who's a big influence on all of us in the UK and across the world. I've played in Loose Tubes is his probably biggest gig, I would have said.
Yeah.
Lots of cool stuff.
So Steve Berry was a big inspiration at the time. I didn't really know much about double bass, but I knew that he played it, and just the way he kind of thought about music and taught music was inspirational. And then I didn't get one right away because I didn't have the money, but you know, I kind of had it in my head. And then after that, I went to Manchester to do a bit of study, and that's when I had lessons with John Thorne.
Oh, really? Yeah. Oh, excellent.
So John was again a big inspiration to me, and probably mainly because, well, the way he talks about music, the way he thinks about it is you know, he talks about all music being equal, you know, rather than just like, oh, I'm a jazz bass player, I'm a classical.
Absolutely.
You know, sort of turned me on to things where the double bass is used in pop and loads of other stuff. And he himself was doing Lamb, so I always thought that was really cool. You know, I was 18 and he'd be doing a jazz gig in a pub, and then the next night, you know, playing a big festival. And it's kind of what I always wanted to do as well. And obviously I've gone on to do. So he was really encouraging. He always said, you know, you can do it if you want to, which...
You know, I saw a picture of you and John Thorne on Facebook just about a week ago, and I saw the picture and I thought, I wonder if we could get John to come for the interview, and then, but with the lockdown, as in today now, but with the lockdown and the fact that John's on the Isle of Wight, it felt a little bit like it was probably not like logistically possible. But that would have been fantastic because I thought, oh, you're two people that I really associate with these big kind of touring acts that are playing kind of crossover music with double bass, and obviously his work in Lamb is incredible.
So at that time when John was doing the Lamb thing, you know, they were really big, and he was teaching me, but there was loads of stuff going on, sort of like late 90s. It was sort of mid to late 90s, the trip hop drum and bass thing was really happening. So, you know, in Manchester there was loads of club nights, and where you'd see people playing the double bass but playing drum and bass, and bands like Red Snapper and For Hero and Lamb, and then just loads of stuff, like lots of hip hop stuff as well, like what Ron Carter did with Tribe Called Quest. All that stuff was just like, that's what I want to do.
Ron Carter's everywhere, isn't he? Just in the history of recorded music, it's like just, you know, he's absolutely impeccable, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
I keep thinking about that Ronnie Size recording.
Brown Paper
Bag. I remember really digging that and thinking, I could imagine it was out at the same sort of time, and you.
So that was one of the reasons as well. It's like, I'm getting a double bass definitely now. When I saw them on Jules Holland.
And the sound as well, like that's the great thing about I think about bands like Go-Go Penguin, is that the space for the tone of the instruments come through so strongly. You know, I've been listening to a lot of your music in the last couple of days, and it just sits right in the middle, and it's really clear. You know, it's never kind of like mushed up. We'll definitely have to be speaking a little bit about the way that you work with the band. So, I mean, Go-Go Penguin. Let's just talk about you guys for a little bit. How does the rehearsal process work? Because we've got some questions that we have from the audience, and Kevin, who's a friend of mine who wrote quite a long kind of
code. It's like usually like collecting ideas together, and then we go into a space together. So somebody might come up with an idea, be it on the piano, on the bass, or Rob's really into Ableton on the laptop, and you know, I'm getting into Ableton quite a lot as well to generate ideas. So it might be quite a big tune, you know, like quite fully formed, but in most cases it's not. It's just quite a small idea, and then we work on it together, and then it sort of blossoms out into, often goes in directions you wouldn't have thought of on your own, and somebody suggests something, and sometimes it's like banging your head against the wall for a long time, where it's like, what are we going to do with this? Where are we going to go with it? And just trying to figure out what possible direction it can take, or whether it needs to change the harmony or stay in the same place. And sometimes there's like one tune actually called Protest, which we had on Man-Made Object, and I remember we spent about 6 weeks on this tune, keep coming back to it. It's like, where's it going to go? What are we going to do? You know, and trying all these different key changes and stuff, and then eventually just thinking it just needs to stick in this rooted in B flat, doing what it did at the beginning. And we've tried all these ideas and they don't work. But we do have this sort of ethos of everybody's ideas are heard, and we try everybody's idea. Even if you don't agree with it, you think that's a bit ridiculous, we always try and do it. So, and there's some bits that are very complex and through composed, and when we put the glitches in and stuff like that, we have to really spend a lot of time like working it out, or we might even put it into music software and then learn it, which is one of our techniques that we do quite a lot.
Oh, that's interesting. So compositionally, it's a collective thing. You'll bring a bass part in, or a melody, or whatever, an idea, and you'll just work through it to try and bring it to life.
Yeah, exactly. It really depends on the piece of composition. There was one off this last album where it started with a drum beat. Rob was in Tokyo actually. We'd had a bit of downtime, so he was in Tokyo, and he's like, I don't know where to go with this, I've just got this beat. He sent it to Chris. Chris put this piano part to it, and then me and Chris spent ages on this bass part that sort of works with the piano part, and then after weeks and weeks we scrapped it and then started again from the drum part, and eventually it's become a tune on the new album called Signal in the Noise. But like I say, it's just a laborious process sometimes, and it's not always fun. Sometimes it is, and sometimes it's like, okay, what are we going to do?
So is it all memorized? Is that where you end up? Is it that you basically know the back catalogue, and you know the albums and you go forward? So you're not kind of, yeah, that is pretty laborious actually in terms of when you cover a lot of material like you guys have. But do you spend a lot of time kind of preparing for a tour then to kind of get the the set lined up, the show ready?
Yeah, it's sort of more like a pool of tunes, much to the annoyance of our production team, because it's now got to a point where the gigs have got bigger, the audiences have got bigger, so it becomes where it's not just about the three of us, there's a lot of people involved, and we have our sound engineer, Joe, who is like the fourth member of the band.
Yeah.
But then, we have monitor engineer, lighting engineer, all these people who need to know kind of the set and how it's going to go. So I actually write the set lists. So I suppose I've got a bit of an advantage that I know, or I can sort of generally pick what tunes we're going to play, and the other guys are like, cool, or no. But it's, we don't always have it exactly set out. It's kind of how we feel on the night sort of thing. So that's a bit to the annoyance of the production.
Because there's a lot of kind of prepared drums, prepared piano. You seem to be recreating a lot of electric sounds acoustically, in what you do. So I imagine there must be a little bit forward planning for that to allow room for,
Well, like I said, Joe, our sound engineer, he is the fourth member of the band. He's been with the band as long as I have, and I'll always have massive respect to Joe for when we first started and it was looking like the shows are going to start getting pretty big. The natural thing that people always do is go, right, we're going to have to get an electric upright.
Yeah.
And I was like, I really don't want to do that. I mean, some of them are great. There's some great models out there. And our manager was like, why not try the Yamaha silent bass? Because he has another band where the bass player uses it. And it sounds really good. It does. But I just really wanted to stick to the traditional acoustic instrument. And Joe was like, right, well, let's try and make it work. So we've gone down this, real rabbit hole of trying ridiculous amount of pickups, really. People talk about bass players trying strings. I've done the pickup thing. It's crazy. And we've got to a point now where we can project like the full frequency range of this bass in very big venues. Like for the last tour before the lockdown happened, we were due to be playing Brixton Academy. So
cool venue. Yeah,
it's a great venue. Really excited. It's a shame that it couldn't happen, but that's like 5,000 capacity standing crowd. So, as much as an acoustic bass sounds great, there's not a chance that anyone's going to be able to hear it. You need to amplify it very, very well. So, we've got to a point where we can do that. So it's pretty good, really.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, I think a little bit later we'll unpick all of your equipment and we can talk about the way that you put things together. Maybe you could speak a little bit about some of these bigger gigs that you've been doing. I mean, what are some of the more memorable concerts that you've played with the trio?
Memorable ones. There's been quite a lot, really. I think doing a headline show at the Royal Albert Hall.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that was a bit of a moment, as you can imagine. My parents came down for that.
Yeah.
Managed to get him a box and everything.
Oh, yeah.
That was a good moment. And it was a good gig as well. I was sort of a little concerned about how the sound would be because it's a big reverberant room, but it was brilliant. So just
sorry, go on.
We did a gig at the top of a mountain in Switzerland.
Oh, that'll do it.
Yeah, sort of. It was right on the border of France and Switzerland, so Mont Blanc in the background, and they had to airlift a grand piano in, with a helicopter. So that was pretty cool.
I'd love to do that kind of thing. Have you seen the Anders Jormim with Bobo Stenson Trio? So Bobo Stenson Trio, and they're in a forest, and Anders Jormim is playing this. I love his playing.
Yeah, it's amazing.
These beautiful lines, and there's trees and birds and things. Yeah, I'm all about that. Another cool thing that I wanted to ask you about was the Tiny Desk concert that you did.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your experience with that.
Yeah, well, that range of concerts are brilliant. They're really good. You know, there's some amazing artists.
Such a good idea, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's
it
just,
is.
and I love the creativity that comes out of that series.
And it's you know, it's not stage. It is an office at someone's desk.
Is it really?
Yeah, it really is. And so everyone's working away, and it's like, oh, we're here, and then set up. And but yeah, the amount of sort of people who watch those is ridiculous. Like in America, we've been there quite a few times and toured, and we've been lucky. We've done some big festivals like Coachella and stuff, but I think doing the Tiny Desk was the one where people would all of a sudden take notice of you. But it's good. I really enjoyed doing it. You know, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and the sound's great as well. Like, you know, you get a really good sound on that show. I was listening to it this morning, and it's you know, the piano sounds amazing, and it's interesting hearing about like the prepared piano, because I'm watching it thinking, how is this working? And obviously your engineers just off camera working.
It's a combination of our engineer Joe Reiser, and also their in-house guys really good as well. So I think putting their heads together, that just really worked in terms of sound. I seem to remember that I accidentally unplugged my bass on that one. I'd sort of stood on the cable, and I remember like thinking, it was better than this in sound check. And then about halfway through, it was like, oh, that's why I can't really hear it. So
that'll do it.
I've unplugged it, but it was all right.
Yeah, it comes across really well in the end. So I've got a last couple of questions just to sort of throw out to you before we wrap up, Nick. What about you know, the jazz trio? What are some of your favourite trios? Because I think, I mean, is Go-Go Penguin a jazz trio?
Oh, you're asking.
How much, actually, sorry, this is a question I forgot to ask earlier, but I was meaning to. How much space for improvisation is there within the arrangements? Like, and I mean, like stretching out and solos and things. Like, how does that work? Sorry, bigger.
Well, I'll go to the jazz question first.
Yeah, go on.
We've never really said that we're a jazz trio. I think everyone's just made that assumption because
there's a double bass and a piano and a drum kit.
Exactly. So, and it's cool, you know, there's a bit of jazz in there. I'm clearly from that background, so, you know, I can't really deny that. And then once you sign to Blue Note, it's like, well, you know, arguably the most famous jazz label in the world.
Good. Did you sign a piece of paper, you know, to do that? I would have enjoyed signing a record contract with Blue Note.
It was, especially for me, I think maybe more than the other two guys, just because I had a bit of an obsession with Blue Note records when I was younger, and I had like the artwork on my walls.
Did you ever get the book which had all the art with the album covers?
Yeah, I've got that.
Yeah, that was cool.
So it was a bit of a mind-blowing moment, and telling people, they were all like, "What?" You know. But
so how have you managed to make it? So it's not jazz then, or what is it? Tell us.
So there is that element there, but there's also a lot of other things. You know, Chris is a classical pianist first and foremost. We all have a love of electronic music, and you know, there's other things that are thrown in there, and rock and all sorts. And it's just like I said before, you know, like music shouldn't be like these sort of terms. It's, you know, they're not really very helpful. It's just like it should be. You can do what you want, so why can't you do that? Why can't you decide that maybe you want to play a rock bass line on a double bass or whatever? And so in terms of improvisation, it's just whatever suits the music. So if somebody writes a piece, I remember specifically when we had a piece called Hopopono, which is off V2.0, which is the album that I joined on. And it's just like, I thought, well, should I do a bass solo on this? And it's like, that'd be terrible. Like it's not gonna sound good for this music, and it's sort of having that sort of maturity or whatever to think, well, this doesn't suit the out and out traditional bass solo or piano solo. So we don't really view it like that. But there are moments in the gigs where we sort of extend out sections that are different to the records, and then take extended solos. And some of them it's just maybe a more subtle type of improvisation where it's sort of more collective and the way that it ticks along and little nuances and stuff, but maybe not like, you know, I'm going to do a bass player and the drummer plays fours. You know, we don't really have that. So
that kind of sax solo and then piano and then bass and then drums and fours and then heads and then that's it.
It's not really that kind of band.
It's not that kind of band. Well, that's really interesting. I was going to ask you about you know, some of your favourite trios, but maybe some of the bands that you've heard whilst you've been on the road with Go-Go Penguin. Is there anyone that kind of jumps out that you've enjoyed listening to?
There's loads. I mean, going back to bass inspiration, I suppose Avishai Cohen is a big one.
I can hear that in your playing,
yeah.
actually.
And
have you had a chance to meet him?
Yeah. We were playing before him at a festival in France, and then played after him at a festival in the Netherlands, and met him again in Tokyo at the Blue Note. He was playing with Chick Corea, and we got invited down. So,
wow.
And they were like, "Oh, come backstage." So I was like, "Okay, I'll have a chat with Avishai then." Tried to see if he'd remembered playing a gig at Wakefield Cricket Club in 2005 or something, but funnily enough, he didn't remember it.
Yeah, it wasn't on his yeah. It's crazy, isn't it, though? I can remember Reynald Garcia Fons playing a gig at the Wardrobe in Leeds in like 2004 or something.
Yeah,
and
he's incredible.
You know, and like the bass players just being in shock afterwards, you know, no one had seen it, you know, pre-internet and kind of thing. Everyone's a bit like, whoa, what's going on? And,
so yeah, Avishai Cohen trio I love. Also, we did it was actually the same gig. Tigran Hamasyan, I think that's how you say it, Armenian pianist, and he had a trio at the time. We all went out for drinks afterwards, actually. It was a pretty good night, but their trio was, we were listening like, this is great. Sort of, not exactly what we're doing, but similar in terms of a crossover thing, and you could hear that he's probably listened to quite a lot of metal and stuff, really. But he's a fantastic pianist, so that trio was great. I'm hoping they'll start recording again, because he's been doing solo stuff since then.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I'll put some links to check out those things. And just to finish off, Nick, like, what's next for you and the guys as you come out of lockdown? What's the next project? Is there anything in the pipeline, or is it still a case of everything's on hold and, you know, will you be working on more recordings, or?
It's still very much things are on hold, but we've got plans in place. Really getting out and touring this album next year. A lot of the gigs that we've had to just cancel this year, we're trying to honour next year if we can, and you know, go and do a lot of the festivals and go back to America and Japan and all that stuff. I think maybe there's some talk of trying to do a streamed gig or something along those lines, but that's very much, you know, there's a lot of people doing that at the moment, so I think it's just an idea about whether that's going to work for us. But yeah, lots more touring. Maybe if it continues, we don't really know what's going to happen with the virus, do we? So if the second wave comes, then maybe start writing. It's hard to say at the moment, really. Thanks
so much for joining us today, Nick. It's been really exciting to hear more about GoGo Penguin and your journey. I haven't seen you for a long time, and you've been off kind of traveling the world, and it's been cool to catch up and hear about what you guys are doing. We'll obviously be sharing your music, links to your, you know, your websites and all of these things underneath, and of course links to discoverdoublebass.com. If you want to improve your playing, please go and check out our website. But we thought we'd finish off with a little bit of music from Nick Blacker. So thanks, Nick.